We all know that in this state of emergency, I like to call it that, this pandemic that we're all experiencing worldwide, one of the main industries that has been hit deep in the pockets, like we spoke before about the AMC's and all the other movie chains that are experiencing this, is the movie theater industry, the movie industry in general. There are plans and contentions for creators to start thinking about making movies that are COVID friendly. There are new plans in place and procedures to create social distancing while filming and creating content. However, the movie theater seems to be the one that is being hit the hardest. And this is because enclosed spaces is not conducive for our state of being right now. Now, streaming services such as Hulu, Netflix, Apple TV Plus, and the works,
HBO.
HBO
HBO.
Max, Peacock, whoever else is out there making their moves, are now they're in a better place than the movie theaters are. So I need to ask this question. What does this mean long term? The longevity of the movie theater business. Now, yesterday on the For Real Instagram page and Facebook page, which you guys should go and subscribe and follow right now, I posted something that we shot a year ago. I don't know if you remember that, Tyler, but I was having a conversation with you about the future of the movie business. Now, I was talking in the next 50 years, what the movie industry could look like at that point. And now it seems as though this state of, or this environment that we're now in, is going to force innovators of this industry to start thinking a little outside the box. How are we, as an industry, going to change the way in which we view how we do business in the movie theater game?
It's very interesting how this conversation has even changed from when we were talking about Trolls World Tour. So we did start this conversation about a year ago, but came back up with that film releasing in April. And now the longer and longer this goes, I think it's going to be harder and harder for studios to fight off putting things on streaming now for the time being. You keep seeing movies getting pushed back and pushed back to try to, counter and make sure that they are seen in theaters. But it's going to get to the point now because you have to keep redoing the marketing. You have to keep reminding people that the movie is going to come out. You got to make sure that people are ready to come out. I mean, as you said, LA just kind of closed down because, because people came out. People are excited to go out and do things, which is fine. I think we all are at this point. But you just, the price tag keeps going up and up and up, especially for a movie like, let's say, Tenet. Mm-hmm. One of our favorite topics on here as of late. The movie was already expensive to make, and the only reason that it's been pushed back and back and back is because of Chris Nolan. Mm-hmm. But now you've had some of these bigger movies come out, like Greyhound. $50 million is not an inexpensive movie.
No.
And while Apple TV is still kind of in its infancy, it shows that people will go watch this movie. I mean, we were even talking over the weekend. I didn't even realize that I had Apple TV, so I was able to watch it for free. But, you would have had to go subscribe to it if you wanted to watch it. I'm more curious as how many people subscribed prior to watching it, like how much of a draw it actually was. Because you can say that this, and it is an impressive number. It is, impressive that it was able to generate that kind of audience on Apple TV. Something that isn't as readily available as not available, readily known as Hulu Netflix, some of the Amazon Prime, some of these bigger things. So I would want to see that number first.
Yeah.
How many people subscribed prior to watching it? And I mean, that'll tell you, will people shell out money for these kind of movies on
Mm-hmm.
a smaller screen? I mean, I know I would. I would honestly watch Tenet anywhere. And
You would.
eventually they do end up on small screens once they come out on Blu-ray and TV, Blu-ray, DVD, air on TV. You are eventually watching them on TV screens. So um, I don't know. I think that the data is getting harder and harder to ignore now.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm sure what's happening now is Warner Brothers is talking to Nolan. And I think that there are some interesting things that could happen. They could go day and date in whenever theaters do open. What if they struck a deal with HBO?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of HBO's obviously willing to do it, and there's a lot of um, good publicity, and they could make a lot of money. They already own HBO,
Mm-hmm.
so they would be getting a lot of that money anyway to
Correct.
make up for Tenet's pricey heft tag. So I mean, it's interesting. I think the more telling sign is, will more of these movies start going this way?
Yeah.
Like now is Mulan seriously considering Disney Plus?
Mm-hmm.
I know that was always an option, but now are they like, okay, what does this actually mean for us?
Yeah.
And taking a big look at it.
I think that's a really good point. I think I wanna backtrack to a point that you made that makes a lot of sense. There are two things that I'm concerned about in this space. One, the studio, as you said, needs to shell out more money for marketing that they've already put out. They've already had a marketing budget. They've already shelled out a lot of money behind the marketing, changing uh, from banners to in streaming ads to ads on Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff, and putting out billboards every other month. It seems like, oh, okay, cool. So Tenet's coming out on the 30th or the 31st of July. We're gonna put out an ad for that, and then now it's got pushed back into August, and who knows if it's gonna get pushed back even further. The second thing that I'm concerned about in this space is false promises. There's only so much the human being could take when it comes to anticipation and hype. I know for a fact, I got a little niece that lives with me, right? She will
Mm-hmm.
come and be, Uncle Greg, I want, can I get some candy? And I'll say, absolutely, give me 5 minutes. 10 minutes would pass. She'll come back. Uncle Greg, you said you were going to get me candy. Can I get candy now? Be like, hold on. Give me 5 more minutes. I'll be right there. I'm working on the podcast. I'm doing different things. I'm hustling hard, right? 15 minutes will pass. She'll come back. She'll be like, Uncle Greg, you said you were going to give me candy. When am I getting my candy? Be like, hold on. Let me get your candy in 5 more minutes. By the fourth time that she has to come and call for me, she is livid to the point where she's doing one out of the two things. She's screaming out of her lungs or she's giving up on the candy altogether, right? Now the
Yeah,
studio
shit. Well, now I don't want it.
exactly. Exactly. And the more that we hold back on these films, for example, and I'll give you a really good example, pre-coronavirus experience, New Mutants. When New Mutants was supposed to come out and they pushed that back, obviously they weren't expecting a global pandemic to hit. So, there was a lot of expectation there. I was excited for that movie. I almost forgot it in this moment right now. Last year, when they first publicized that the movie was coming out 2019, I almost forgot. I was excited at that point. At this point, I almost forgot that that was even a film that was coming to the silver screen or going to be available for me to consume at some point. They have lost dollars. I'm sure a lot of people have forgotten about that movie in the long run. They have lost dollars, right? So it comes down to the studio starting to think about what is the long-term effect if now they've already built the hype. For some of these films, they've already built the hype. Tenet has been on ads since 2019, right? It's been in your face since 2019. How much longer can the public be in waiting in high anticipation? I'm not just talking about like, oh, okay, cool, we'll see that movie when we see it. You know, when you broadcast it last year, you know, they're gonna salivate for that one date that has been moved quite a few times. If they push it back any further, how long, like, do you think that the public will be willing or still salivating for this movie to release?
I think it depends on who you ask, honestly.
Mm.
You know me. I see lots of movies. I'm gonna watch it regardless. That's just who I am. But to your point about the studios losing, I forget where I read this, so don't officially quote me on this. But I mean, we already knew Tenet was an expensive movie to make. I think all in, including marketing right now, I read that Warner Brothers has spent $400 million around that.
Mm.
And I mean, how much longer are they going to keep pushing it?
Yeah, that's the real conversation. Now, I could say that Mulan and No Time to Die has gotten a little more leeway in terms of. I think that No Time to Die, the studio did a really good job of pushing that all the way back, right?
Oh
From
yeah,
some,
they planned. They didn't do it weeks. They went, we're going November.
yeah,
Let's see how this shakes out. So
Ye-
they have not really lost out
no,
on much.
no. And I think that Disney is waiting for the Chinese market to open back up so that they have an opportunity at launching Mulan. I think I'm not sure if they're really expecting that to have a big draw over there. I do think that Disney has that kind of pull, and they're not willing to lose out on money um, that easily when it comes to that. But they've also pushed that back only once. I think it was Tenants moved
Oh,
twice or three times.
Mulan was supposed to come out in March. So
Good point. Good point.
so it
Uh,
went like March, May, June. I think it's pushed like four times at least.
my
It's pushed
goodness.
more than Tenet has.
So you got those situations, and I already know that the taste for now again, like you said, you will go and watch the movie regardless, right? Any of these movies that release, if they release tomorrow on VOD or they release next year in the theaters, Tyler's gonna go watch it. That's a fact. But is it going to be as sweet as a delivery for the majority of the population that are going to watch these movies? Like, I do get there's a breaking point for all people when you're promised something and it doesn't come to being. At least through the streaming services, I believe that you could quench that thirst and still make a profit if you are in the studio's position. You're just not going to satisfy. There's only one person not to satisfy, especially in the case of Tenet, and that would be Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers would have put this on a streaming service if it weren't for him.
Yeah,
And that's and also they're not going to go, at least right now, they're not going to go put it on Netflix. They're not going to go put it. They're trying as much as they can to stay away from the streamers, not counting VOD. VOD is, I count as different than like Netflix, Amazon, and because they brand their content as their original content, whether they acquire them or they're sold or whatever it is. To
correct.
me, VOD is like the movies that when I that do not necessarily have a wide theatrical release or an actual streamer that they were able to sell to. That's something that has been sold to, ironically, Apple, or they release it on their VOD. At least for me, that's where I get mine. I think
Okay.
Amazon has their own of that as well. I'm rambling
Yeah,
now. My apologies.
it's all good. It's all good. I think what I will say though is that we're yet to see a blockbuster release direct to consumer that makes or generates the type of money that it would if it came out in the theater. And
Uh,
that's the data that we don't have. Now, regardless, we do have Trolls World Tour,
I was
but
gonna I was gonna say that Trolls actually made more money on demand than it probably would have made in the theater.
absolutely, right? Um, but Tenet, like you said, they spent 400 million, upward of $400 million on that project.
And
Do you
that's all they're
think?
telling us. That's all they're. It's probably more.
Hmm. So then my question is, what is the figure that needs to be hit when it comes to Tenet releasing to VOD? Like, how are how do they know, or not even how do they know? What would be the number that breaks them even if they release like if it releases on VOD tomorrow? What's the success number?
It depends on how much they charge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for Tenet, I feel like Nolan would try to make it 30 or $40 a ticket to go on VOD. I think he that would be his way of getting back at people for it going on VOD. Not to make him sound vindictive against audiences or anything like that, but he is so against VOD and against streaming and all of that. He's very much concerned about theatrical. I could see him making it pricier than it would need be for people to watch it. So, I mean, it would probably be upwards of $30-$40 a ticket. It'd probably need 10 million plus to watch it, depending on the price.
10 million at $30 a pop.
So like 300.
Yep.
So that's not
That's
even making up to the 400.
no. No. So then it comes down to something that I wanted to connect with you next on, Tyler. So for years, I'm gonna put it out there. For years, we've been tracking publicly what movies have been making at the box office through different websites, the numbers.com, proboxoffice.com, whatever you're into tracking that type of information. But if the industry, at least for the foreseeable future, has transferred itself to direct to consumer, streaming, VOD, do you think, I know this is sounding like a question and answer, but like this is so that we could get into this debate, you know what I'm saying? Do you think that with that shift, if that shift does happen and the movie theater is negated, do you think that the statistics should be available for the public to review?
Yes, I do. I think that everyone is going to have, at least in the beginning, have to be more transparent about their successes and failures.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because it's uncharted, and I think that it until we're able to find a quantifiable way to easily convey that data as well, I think that the studios are just going to have to say this is it. This was a success, and this was pretty much like what Universal did with Trolls. That was a huge success, and
Mm-hmm.
when the theaters fought back, they fought them back with data. They were very open about why this was such a big win for the studio, rather than just be like, well, you're just gonna have to trust us,
Yeah.
which is what Netflix does. They're just like, so we're just telling you that this is what people did, and usually the data that we pulled was that they watched at least 2 minutes of it. That counts as like a view, or so, like I think there was something crazy like that. If you watch like 2 to 5 minutes of something, that counts as viewed for Netflix. That counts as a view
For
for the
Netflix.
service. Yeah.
Right. That's
Which I mean,
crazy.
I've I've been bad because I've with Netflix. Like I like to check out things, so I've watched the first 2 to 5 minutes of stuff. I'm probably counted in those views, and I can tell you, there's a lot of stuff that I did not watch to its
To
full
the
runtime.
right, 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 right.